Are we asking too much from God? From my experience, the answer to that question is complex. I didn't grow in my faith until 2 years ago. I got sober 4.5 years ago by the grace of God. But I didn't really start growing in my faith until I found a church and a pastor that I could relate to. That was really what was holding me back my whole life. My name's Josh, living life alcohol free. Welcome into my channel. I want to talk a little bit today about faith and asking God for certain things in our lives. I want to start out with the Lord's Prayer because I find it's important in everyday life to ask God for the basic things that we need. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is done in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we have forgiven those who have trespassed against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is thy kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I didn't really learn that prayer or know even about it until I watched the first 3 seasons of The Chosen. I never read the Bible. I mean, I read parts of it. I read, passages, things like that. But I never really took the time to really jump into it. What happened when my church launched in 2022 was my pastor was at another church prior to that, and I started attending that church in 2017. It wasn't on a regular basis or anything like that. It was maybe like once a year. I found that church through my daughter and a friend of hers that attended that church. I just kind of went and I liked it. I started to kind of think about what I could do. I mean, I was always a believer in God from an early age, about 12, I would say, but I didn't grow up in a faith-based family or anything like that. I just happened to go to a Christian camp with a neighbor of mine who invited me, and I just went because I thought it sounded like fun. A week in the woods and a teepee, swimming and playing sports and things like that. Who wouldn't love that, right? I went to that. I made a mistake. I brought some candy that I wasn't supposed to, packed it in my bag. The counselor got wind of it and asked me if it was true that I had it in my bag. He looked through my bag and confiscated it and asked me if I could stay after the bonfire and have a chat with him about what I had done. And I did. And what happened with that was he asked me if I believed in Jesus. I told him, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I know of him, but I don't really understand or feel like I can relate. I grew up like a lot of people with kind of parents that weren't really present. I mean, they were there, but this was the 80s. I'm dating myself here, but this was a time when we just went out and did our own thing. I mean, I remember just riding miles and miles on my bike when I was 12 and 13 and 14 years old away from home, and my parents never really worrying about it. My parents didn't really worry about my grades that much. They didn't really communicate their belief in God too much, even though I know that my dad believed because he had a necklace with Jesus on the cross, but he never really spoke of it other than that. But I know he had that and he wore it, and he wore it a lot. I saw that, and also my mom, I could hear her talking about God. I knew that she believed. I just didn't really, she never communicated it with me about the depth of her faith. I kind of just winged it. That counselor at that camp took it a step further. So when he asked me if I believed in Jesus, and I said I really wasn't sure, he said, well, let me just ask you this. Can you give your faith to Jesus? And in that moment, I said yes. I felt like I was in trouble. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed and all that. He said, let me just share with you a simple prayer. And if you use this prayer, it's going to help you in your life. And the prayer is, please, Lord, forgive me for my sins. Thank you for everything you've given me and be in my heart at all times. I said that prayer my entire life from that point forward. I never had somebody who was caring, who didn't come down hard on me when I made a mistake like that. And having somebody that I really didn't know give me that grace and actually teach me something that was going to be of value to me played a huge impact in my upbringing and in my life. I turned to alcohol when I was 15. I was just looking for ways to quiet my anxiety have fun. But it wasn't until I started really getting in trouble with the alcohol a few years later that I really started to question what I could do. I mean, on one hand, I was praying to God, but on the other hand, I was becoming addicted to alcohol. And I had those two things at odds with each other. And that went on for decades. When I found this pastor that I like and found that he left this church and started a new church, I went to the launch. I went pretty much every week for like the first 3 months, and I learned a ton. So if you're new to faith and you're new to praying, or you've always prayed but you've never really understood how God operates and how Jesus plays a role in our everyday life, I'm here to just share with you what my experience has been and let you in on a little bit of my background and see if that might help resonate with you on your path. I started going to church that year. We still had issues with COVID in 2022. So once winter came, I started to not go because the pastor was sick and people from the congregation were sick. I stopped going, and they didn't have an option to watch it on YouTube or any other platform on their app or anything yet. So I went pretty much all winter without seeing their messages. I still started to read the Gospels. I felt like I could start there. And in that first few months, that's kind of what I learned, that the story of Jesus is in the Gospels. And that's what the show The Chosen was about. Somebody made a comment on whether they're going to make season 4. And they said, well, if you want to know what happens in season 4, all you got to do is pick up the Bible. And that made so much sense to me. It was like ding, ding, ding. I mean, that's what this is all about, right? It's about the Gospels. So that sparked me to start reading the Gospels and just start simple and start from there. And I could relate already because I'd watched the show and it was helpful. So I started reading the Gospels. It took me pretty much all of, I would say, 2023 to get through the Gospels. But in that period of time, in that show The Chosen, Jonathan Rooney, who plays Jesus, said to one of his disciples, "Do you know how to pray? And let me teach you how to pray," because he could tell he was struggling. And he said, "Our Father who art in heaven." And when he said that, it cut kind of to the next scene. I Googled "Our Father who art in heaven," and naturally the Lord's Prayer popped up. And then I read all of it. I kept that bookmarked on my phone. And every night when I would go to bed, I would try to say that prayer. And of course, I'd have to look at it. I could do like the first part, and then I could do like the second part after a week or so by memory, and then the third part, and so on, until 3 months later, I had it down pat. Then I started using that prayer at night for bedtime for my daughter. I've been saying it with her ever since. So it's our thing. How cool is that to stick with something and to memorize it and to understand what it means to ask God for forgiveness and thank him and to be in our hearts. That's what that prayer was that that counselor at the camp was trying to instill in me. And now I know the longer version of that, and I say it every night, and even when I go to bed personally. So I say it twice a night, really, and it's been huge in my life. Very beneficial. I went a few times in 2023 to church, but they started putting it online more, and I started watching it online more frequently. And when 2023 Christmas came, I introduced myself to my pastor. I got to know him to a point where he had me do a testimonial for my sobriety for Easter Sunday. He called me out of the blue. He needed somebody to step in. Somebody had backed out, and it was just a few weeks, maybe a month before Easter. I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." I started really opening up about my sobriety, and it was really beneficial to be able to do that. The months leading up to that, he had shared with me his reading program for the Roberts Bible reading plan on the YouVersion app. I went on there and I started the program, and it's like 10 to 20 minutes a day of Bible reading, and it takes you from day 1 of the new year all the way to the end of the year. I just thought, I'm doing this and I'm committed to it, and now it's making sense that it's all kind of spelled out for me. All I have to do is read it, and I read it on audibly. It reads to you, or I can just read along with it. Either way, sometimes I read along with it. If I'm out and about and I have a few minutes, I'll pull it up. I'll start reading. I get through that plan each day, and I'm 300 days in. And now I have just the 65 days left of the year. And I've learned and I've gained so much. Although I don't go to church frequently, I still try to go online and watch it on YouTube, and the messages sink in. The point I'm trying to make here is that every little bit that you can do and grow in your faith and you do consistently each day is going to massively, massively change your life. It's changed my life. It's changed it. I mean, sobriety was one thing, but actually finding a pastor, finding a church finally that I could relate to a couple years into my sobriety, and then growing in my faith, and now being 4.5 years sober, I can tell you that spirituality and my sobriety go hand in hand. And that's what this channel is all about. It's about sobriety, but it's also about faith. It's about me living my life alcohol free and being grateful to God for everything that I have in my life. I wouldn't have that had He not answered my prayer and pulled me out of my addiction when I asked Him, please, God, can you take the pain away? And the first thing to go was the alcohol. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I know it's not a coincidence. He's there, he's listening, which leads me to the point of this video, which is, are we asking too much of God? I pulled out a few verses from the Bible, and I'd like to read them to you. Matthew 7:7, keep on asking, and you will receive what you ask for. John 16:24, ask using my name, and you will receive, and you will have abundant joy. James 4:2, you do not have because you do not ask. So all these questions about, are we asking God too much? Are we asking too much of God to answer our prayers? There's certain things He's not going to answer. There's certain things, and we know what those things are. I mean, I used to beg God to make life easier. I used to beg God to, when I asked Him to take the pain away, that was a prayer that He was able to answer. But until that point, and I learned this through church and reading the Bible and studying my faith, it's the prayer where you ask for to make life easier. Can you just make it simple and not so complicated, and just begging Him to just make life simple. And the reality is life is never going to be simple. And I kind of learned that through my sobriety, but I've learned it even more through my faith in my sobriety. Instead of begging God and asking Him to make things easier, or taking the people out of my life that make my life hard, I ask for strength and to endure these situations that I'm struggling with. Asking Him for the strength instead of begging Him to make things easier has changed my life 100%, because I don't need to ruminate on the past anymore. I can ask in the moment, give me the strength. And He does. And I'm asking boldly for that strength. And I'm asking Him, what can I do for you to make this situation better for another person, for your kingdom, not making it about me anymore. It's not about me anymore. And that's what my addiction did. And that's what people that are addicted to drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, whatever it is, those are selfish things, and we don't mean them to be. But once we're in the clutches of addiction, that's just how it is. It makes life so complicated and so hard to manage. When we're struggling and we ask for forgiveness, and we truly highlight what our sin is, that what it is that we're struggling with is a problem, and that we ask Him to take that from us so that we can go another direction and do things that are in His glory, for His kingdom. And those things make our lives better, make the lives of the people around us better, and it just makes the world a better place to live in. I've got a sobriety community. If you're here because of faith, that's great. If you're here because of sobriety, I welcome you to come over to this group. It's a private Facebook group. It's called Sobriety in the Storm. There's quite a few of us that are there 24/7, and we can help you in any way that you might need encouragement. I encourage you to come on over there. There's just a few questions you have to answer. Once you answer them, you're in. I've had people that didn't answer them that came in, but it would be nice to know who you are and what you're there for, so I can personally know and we can help you in any way that you need. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate every one of you being here. Like and subscribe if you found this video useful, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, everybody.